Good morning, everybody. This is Pastor Rick, Broadman Baptist Church, and this is the Broadman Word for Friday, March 20th, 2026. I am sorry that it has been a minute since I have done one of these. I will try to get back into the swing of things and have these be much more regular, meaning the original Monday, Wednesday, Friday schedule that they were intended for. Today I'm going to talk to you about our government and obeying, and something pretty difficult for us to think about, and even more so do, particularly when we have disagreements with the government. 1 Peter 2, 13 and 15 say, "Submit yourself for the Lord's sake to every human institution, whether to a king as the one in authority or to governors as sent by him, for such is the will of God." So you're thinking, whoa, wait a minute. I'm supposed to submit to all these human institutions, and there is good biblical theory here for us to think about. So when our leaders are following along with what we know to be the will of God, it's easy to think that God's in control of the government. It's simple. But when we have leaders who seem to be opposed to the things of God, can you still say, in confidence that God is in control of the government? And of course, then the question is, well, if he is, then what should our response be when government officials ask us to do what is wrong? The question becomes, is it biblically wrong? I mean, can you point to something in the Bible and say, okay, this is not correct. This is not the will of God. Then you have an obligation to resist. You have an obligation at that point to not comply with human instructions. But Solomon in Ecclesiastes, specifically 8, tells us that if we see some of the things that Solomon saw which caused him to doubt the sovereignty of God, which was corruption in government, we then have to think, well, then why in chapter 8 did he say we ought to obey the government? Why should we do that? Well, there's really three reasons that we should think about when we're deciding what to do here. Obedience to authority is the same as obedience to God. If we look at Ecclesiastes 8:2 from Solomon's writing, it says, "Keep the command of the king because of the oath before God." So in Solomon's day, if you were not an Israelite, then you were naturalized into becoming a Jew, and you would have to take an oath before God to obey the Jewish king. If you were a native citizen, then that was implied that you would do that. So Solomon was saying to obey the king is the same thing as to obey God. And then, of course, in 1 Peter 2, 13 through 15, we just read, and I'll repeat, "Submit yourselves for the Lord's sake to every human institution, whether to a king as the one in authority or to governors as sent by him, for such is the will of God." So, obeying government authorities then is equated to obeying God. And frankly, if you think about it, if you can't obey a visible authority that's right there in front of you, even if you disagree with them, how are you going to obey the invisible God at times where you might disagree with him? It's difficult to say that you would do that. So it is important then for us to realize, unless there is a clear biblical dictate, something that you can unequivocally stand on saying, no, God said this, and this human authority wants this, those situations you are to follow the Bible. You are to be a child of God. God is the ultimate king. You are to do his biblical will. Beyond that, though, social issues, other non-biblical laws, even if you disagree with them, we are to obey the government, and Scripture equates obeying government to being in obedience to God. So, a difficult thing for us to understand, especially with all the political divisions out there these days, all the different opinions, theories, theologies, and ways of going about this thing we call life. We are ultimately supposed to be under the authority of those appointed over us. So, a little something for you to think about today, and how you go about presenting yourself to the world with your comments, your social media, your generalized activities, and things. Are you being obedient to the government and the governors appointed over you, up to the point of clear biblical delineation, right? We have that where we stop. But otherwise, we're supposed to be good citizens, and that in doing so, honoring God. Listen, this came from the Pathway to Victory devotional by Dr. Robert Jeffries. It's a good one. If you're not involved in a devotional, I would highly suggest you check that one out. Listen, have a blessed day in the Lord. I love you, and I'll talk to you next time.